Hey guys, what's up? Week 411. Got some reviews for you, an update for you. I hope the shirt's tight enough. I hope there is enough armpit exposure for everybody. So I know that's why everybody's tuning into the show. Forget the movies, just show the armpits. I get the drill. But yeah, let's hop right into the reviews. The first one up is from Arrow Video, and this is The Long Kiss Goodnight, 1996. Rennie Harlan, written by Shane Black. This was actually, I think, a script way before it actually got made into a movie. Now, Rennie Harlan is working with his wife at the time, Geena Davis. Geena Davis is the star of this movie. Also has Sam Jack in it. It's kind of the two biggest names. Also, Brian Cox, David Morris make an appearance. And the lead baddie is an actor that I don't know, but he does a great job. He's in a bunch of stuff, but not much I've ever seen. Like, you ever see those actors like, oh, he's great. Don't know who the fuck he is, though. And he just kills it in the movie. He's hilarious. But, okay, The Long Kiss Goodnight is about duality, I guess. Alter egos, kind of. What happens is Geena Davis is narrating the opening, and she is what would appear to be your everyday average wife. Except it's Geena Davis. So it's not exactly average. She's a school teacher, but she claims to be born 8 years ago or something along those lines. That she woke up on a beach with just a key, and that's all that she knows about her. She has amnesia. Come to find out, after a car accident that kind of awakens something in her, possibly an alter ego, she is a secret agent. Yeah. And so all these people from her past life come kind of into it, including like badass assassins and all these kind of things like that. So she's kind of juggling these two lives and everything. Sam Jack is like a private eye kind of scummy guy that's really funny in this movie that she hired to try to figure out her identity, and he actually did figure some things out. They have to team up because the bad guys are after them. Brian Cox is like an awesome old secret agent. Brian Cox I love. He's in stuff like The Silent Scream. There's an old one from 1980, the Hammer movie. X-Men 2, Super Troopers, Manhunter. Just an excellent, kind of underrated actor, I believe Canadian. He does the voices on the McDonald's commercials now, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely Brian Cox's voice there. But yeah, this is just a ridiculously fun movie. Geena Davis and Rennie Harlan, I think, did they meet before? I think they met before Cutthroat Island or around that time, and they got married. That was considered the biggest Hollywood flop of all time, Cutthroat Island, which Rennie Harlan directed. And then he would go on to do this one, written by Shane Black, who's a great writer. Shane Black wrote stuff like, the Lethal Weapon films. Yeah, and he Predator, he's in Predator, and he just is a great action director. The Long Kiss, what the fuck is that other one he did? Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Don't want to confuse The Long Kiss Goodnight and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. But yeah, this is just fun, equal parts action, clever, violent. Geena Davis is kind of a strange character in this movie. I enjoy her. I think she does a good job. But I do think she's a little bit more convincing as like the kind of teacher or whatever, kind of confused teacher. I think she does that really well. And her actual discovery of some of her like talents when she's cutting the carrots is always a really memorable scene, vegetables. But, the action's great. It's a little over the top, which is purposely done, kind of definitely in that vein of the late 80s, early 90s. This is 96, so I feel like we're kind of... I'm going to say this, we're losing that American action bubble at that time. I think by the late 90s, it's pretty much dead. I do think stuff like this, and Con Air and The Rock, and we're just kind of like the last bastions of ridiculously fun, giant action movies that had amazing like set pieces. I know a lot of people don't think Con Air and The Rock are great. I think they're vastly entertaining and fun and have amazing casts, and I think this is kind of in line with that. Rennie Harlan is a very capable director. He does action really well, as you can tell from like Cliffhanger, or even in his early horror films like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and Prison. He was very capable of making crazy shit happen. And a lot of crazy, fun shit happens in Long Kiss Goodnight. Sam Jack, for me, steals the show. Because throughout the beginning, obviously... in today's kind of standards, he's like, oh, he's a chauvinist asshole, and he always is making these jokes, hollering at women running down the street. And at first, you're like, oh, this guy's kind of douchey, but he's still funny with a lot of his dialogue. Sam Jack has so much charisma, He just, on screen, he's amazing. And this is one of my favorite roles, I think. So like, as it progresses and he learns more about her and she starts to kind of fight with this duality, he kind of pushes her in the right direction and kind of warms up throughout the movie. And I think he's great in it. Me and my friend always joked about this. When this one came out, we watched it a few times, that Sam Jack in the movie is constantly getting hurt. He's like almost a John McClane type, where he's just constantly getting fucked up throughout the movie. Like, he's not dead yet. He is not dead yet. But yeah, this is a fun, crazy movie. There is a scene in here where one of the baddies kind of explains his motives, what he's going to do. He's like, the first World Trade Center attack, and he explains faking a terrorist attack so they get more funding, and everything's just hitting way too close to home, and you're like, fuck, man, that's crazy. Like, I'm surprised they didn't Simpsons edit it, you know, kind of where it's like they didn't know the Super Bowl, so it was like, Atlanta Falcons. This is like, yeah, well, our plan is to... and like just cover their mouth and fill in some bullshit because you're like, oh, that's a little crazy, a little too viable. I can buy that, especially for a movie like this that's pretty much over the top, except that. Also, it takes place in the snow, and Rennie Harlan's great with the snow. As you can see with Cliffhanger and some other things like Vertical Limit. He kind of was one of those action directors. You don't see too much action films in the snow. A lot of snow. The stunts are fantastic, and watching the special features, which there's a slew of them, I will talk about. So it's on 4K. It looks fucking excellent. Of course, we got the Dolby Atmos surround sound, excellent sounding stuff here. 7.1 mix. There's an Dolby Atmos 7.1 usually. But as far as the special features, here we have brand new audio commentary by film critic Walter Cha, brand new audio commentary by film critics Drusilla Adeline and Joshua Conkle, co-hosts of the Bloodhouse podcast. And then we have Sympathy of Destruction, new interview with stunt coordinator Stephen M. Davidson. And he talks about some of the stuff that Gina Davis and Sam Jack actually did themselves, which was the crazy stunt going out the window. There's a lot of cool information on that. Long live the new Flesh, a new interview with makeup artist Gordon J. Smith. Girl Interrupted, a new interview with actress Yvonne Zima. That is the daughter. She... talks about the film a little bit. You know, she's all grown up now. So, you know, I can't think of exactly the kind of stuff she says here, but she does remember having to wear, like, you know, I think she broke her arm or something on the set. Just little interesting stories like that. Amnesia Chick, a new visual essay by film scholar Josh Nelson. These are all going to blur together here, but that one's pretty solid if I remember. But The Mirror Cracked, a new visual essay by critic and filmmaker Howard S. Berger. This thing is long. It's very long. It's very in-depth. He is referencing classic old cinema, deep cut cinema. It's just a really elaborate kind of video essay. And then the next one, A Woman's World, a new video essay by film scholar Alexandra Heller-Nichols. Also a great one. A little bit different kind of approach to it, talking, I think, a little bit more about Gina Davis's life and stuff, and her stuff with kind of like... I wouldn't like be like a feminist movie, and they're talking about this movie being like a feminist movie, and they were like kind of nervous to talk about that out loud, or they weren't so sure to say it. And then we have deleted scenes, which are different. Some of them are more violent. And then archival promotional interviews with director Rennie Harlan, Gina Davis, Sam Jack, Craig Burtko, making a featurette, archival promotional featurette, behind the scenes, archive EPK footage from the filming of The Long Kiss Goodnight. Now, when this came out, I think it got fair reviews. I don't know if it did very well at the box office. They mentioned, you know, if it would have been a man in that role, it would have done a lot better. But they really believe truly that it should have been a female. And, you know, I would agree. And Rennie Harlan does well with special effects, does well with action. I like Gina Davis. I've always liked Gina Davis ever since I saw her as a little kid in Beetlejuice, and she's in Thelma and Louise. Just always a good performer. Sam Jack, like I said, I think he's one of the best to ever do it in terms of entertainment. Brian Cox, great. David Morris, also really strong in this smaller role, but good role, always good. David Morris, underrated, good actor. So it's got a great little cast in here. The main bad guy is really funny because in one hand, you're like, he's kind of got like this Chandler Bing energy where he's just constantly doing these smart, like smarmy bullshit, but he's just heartless. He's so heartless, and he does it with a smile on his face, and he looks like a supermodel kind of guy, but he's just like, he's really funny in it. And the essays point out all sorts of crazy shit, like these visual things that you didn't notice, like, and they're digging deep. And I think a lot of this shit isn't here, like crossing the little stream to crack the deer's neck to finally, like, release some of that old you. And it's like, oh man, this is much more in depth than I expected on the essays and stuff. Really nice release from Long Kiss Goodnight. Recommended. And it's nice seeing these movies again, you know, when like it gives you a reason to pop in an old movie that you watched when it came out and enjoyed, but you don't really remember. And there's so many that are pretty solid and much better than you remember. And I don't want to be that guy who's like, get off my lawn, but back in the day, even the movies that were considered like, you know, average, 6s and 7s, you go back and watch them, you're like, that's like a 7 and 8, 8.5. They hold up a little bit better. And I think that's just my personal preferences of being shot on film with the acting and the cast and the music. All that shit kind of coming together. But Long Kiss Goodnight, recommended. Check it out. Great release from Arrow Video. Okay, the next one here is The Lady is the Boss from A.A.A. Films. This is part of the Shaw Brothers collection, of course. And this is more of a contemporary picture. You know, a lot of the Shaw Brothers movies are not. They're usually period pieces. But this this one is a lot of fun. I don't know how to explain this. It's definitely in the comedy vein. It's, I guess you'd say East meets West kind of sort of deal, but also fish out of water sort of deal. So what we have here is this classic martial arts school, 5 fucking students, and the teacher. What is it, Lar Kung, who also directed the film. He stars in it. He also directed it. He directed a bunch of movies like Shadow Boxing, which is a really fun kind of, I give you like comedy, horror, fantasy kind of Shaw Brothers movies. He also did Legendary Weapons of China, which is an 82 movie. Movies I covered on here. Good director, good actor. If you see him, you'll recognize him. He's got kind of like a mole on his face. But he's pretty good, seemingly, in martial arts as well. But he has these 5 students, one of which is Gordon Liu, one of which is, they're all familiar faces, but the one is the guy from Crippled Masters, the guy who's slow. I always like that guy. I cannot remember his name, but I love seeing him. He's one of my favorites in these movies. But it's a very small school, and in the very beginning, you realize how much they love their school and how dedicated they are to the school, because they're going to tear the whole fucking thing down, and they're like, no, we're not doing it. And then they get word from the master, who's currently in the West, that, no, let it go, we're going to rebuild the school. So they let it tore down, and they're waiting for their master to arrive at the airport. They're all excited, and there's like some lawyers too, some kind of like bureaucrats that are involved with the school as well. I not really, but they kind of feel more like that. So they're excited, everybody, to meet the teacher. And what happens is his daughter shows up, and she's all westernized, and it's like, hey, I know how to get kung fu. And they're like, what? And at first the students are like, I don't know about this. And they're so like sheltered. They haven't seen like a woman like in aerobic size. So she goes totally 80s. She's 83. So she's like, we're going to like jazz up this club. Everybody's going to be wearing stupid ass fucking 80s kind of style clothes, like windbreakers. And the sensei's obviously pissed off. He doesn't want it. I don't know if you call them senseis in Hong Kong or China, but so the master is like, I don't like this, but it starts to creep in. She starts to take over because it's the master kind of orders his daughter, and what happens is the main teacher leaves and she takes over, and it's this ridiculous moment where they're trying to bring in kids into the club, and there's a great funny training sequences, and they have these run-ins with this other gang at these dance clubs, which become the primary enemies of the film. So it's a lot of funny kind of dialogue. There's a great thing here where the teacher comes back and sees them. I'm spoiling a lot. I shouldn't be, but there's some funny lines in here. I guess I won't spoil everything, but there's a couple moments when the guy's like, it's gay culture, and it's just like, the teacher's like, what the fuck? But it's because it's so random in 1983 for, a Hong Kong, martial artist who's so, like, supposed to be trained and dressed all these kind of crazy 80s clothes. But, of course, there's going to be a big conflict, and it's going to be up to all of them to come together to fight at the very end. It's entertaining. It's fun. It's kind of in your fish out of water kind of thing. The fights are good. They're entertaining. There's a crazy fucking motorcycle sequence, which is completely unhinged and just wild. It's not, like, the best thing you've ever seen, but you're like, why is this in here? Like, why are we just like, hey, you know what? Let's just have a fucking motorcycle, kung fu, or like dirt bike. It's like more like dirt bike things, like kung fu thing or whatever. I don't know. They're big in the 80s. But this movie is very 80s. Lead actress, I cannot remember her name, but I really like her in here. Is it Kara Hu? I've seen her before. But yeah, of course, a lot of the faces are familiar. The fighting is great. But as far as the special features, of course, we have slipcase with brand new artwork by Lucas Perville. Double-sided full-out poster. Then we have audio commentary by Frank Jin, Sam Ho on Lar Kar Leng by Fred Arbroassine. I never know how to say that last name. He does so many special features, and I really should learn a little bit more. But yeah, this one's fun, entertaining, good stuff. If you like kind of the comedy kung fu movies that aren't too goofy, but goofy enough, it feels like an 80s comedy movie with kung fu in it, from America even. So check this one out. I enjoyed it. Lady is the Boss. That's right. Okay, next up is from Eureka Films, and this is the final movie in Super Spies and Secret Lies, 3 undercover classic films from Shaw Brothers, and this one is The Singing Thief. Now, these are all heavily inspired by the James Bond kind of big boom in the 60s and early 70s, and Shaw Brothers had to get in on the action along with numerous other countries, including Italy and Greece and all over the world, actually, and Japan. But yeah, so this one here is The Singing Thief. This is directed by Chang Chi, who directed about 50% of the Shaw Brothers movies I've seen, which is probably over 25, 30 movies that I've seen. And the guy's directed tons and tons of movies. So this one is a little bit different. They're incorporating music in here. So this guy, it reminds me a little bit of Hudson Hawk in a weird way, and I love Hudson Hawk, so it's immediately comparison. But this guy had recently been released from prison. He was, he says, it's a frame up for being a jewel thief, but he got framed for it, and now he's kind of like a famous, handsome singer, and he's very popular among the ladies. But, some jewels start ending up disappearing, and he is the prime suspect, and he's out there to clear his name, but nobody believes him, of course, and he has run-ins with beautiful women, and everybody is possibly his friend, possibly his enemy. We really don't know. There's going to be some crazy sets, some crazy, kind of cat burgling stuff, and some run-ins, some secret rendezvous in the ballroom dance, and kind of disco-style tech deal going on. Overall, The Singing Thief is fun. It's entertaining. I think I like it better than The Angel with the Iron Fist, but I don't think I care for it more than the Golden Buddha in the set. I think this one's a little bit unique, a little bit fun. More so than the other ones, Lo Wei directed the other two, and this is weird. I watched so many Shang-Chi movies. He seems to not really be pinned down. If you put in a Shang-Chi movie, I couldn't tell it was a Shang-Chi movie. He seems very versatile in what he can do, and I don't think he's so pigeonholed into doing one type of film at all, which is a compliment to in a lot of ways. But a lot of people could say, maybe it's just a gun for hire kind of deal. But I don't necessarily know that, and I wouldn't make a claim on that. But overall, I thought The Singing Thief was fun, entertaining, kind of has some cool looks to it. There's a really funny gag in here where there's this police chief constantly chasing him, which is just a complete moron, and all the kids are always making fun of him in the street, making these little rhymes and stuff because he constantly keeps failing at every step of the way. That's kind of like a reoccurring gag that I think works pretty well. As far as the special features are concerned, these things are nice on here. International Super Spies, new interview with James Bond expert Luella Chapman on global blonde mania in the 1960s. This is good because we go all the way from the beginning and we start talking about how it got in here and everything like that, why it was made, what Bond films were good, Sean Connery, all that kind of shit like that. Which one was the kickoff for all this shit? From Hong Kong with Love, new interview with Hong Kong cinema scholar Wayne Wong, editor of Martial Arts Studies. This is similar, a little bit shorter, a little bit different approach to the material, but I think it's good. We also have a commentary by Mike Letter and Army Venema. So yeah, nice release. If you like spy movies, if you're interested in other countries' look at the James Bond kind of spy mythos kind of deal, or not mythos, but style, then check out this set from Eureka Films. Overall, I think it's a nice, fun set, and if you dig the movies, they look great, they sound great, and they got that little pulpy 60s look style to them. Boy, oh boy, what can I say about the classic 1976 movie by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro, Taxi Driver. I just felt like watching a classic. I have not seen Taxi Driver in over 10 years. So it's one of the all-time greats. Probably, at one point, one of my all-time favorite movies, and I would still consider it a favorite. It has an amazing cast. Robert De Niro, Jodie Foster, Peter Boyle, Harvey Keitel, Sybil Shepherd. Did I say Peter Boyle? Albert Brooks. Who else pops in here? You see Joe Spinell, Victor Argo. It's just a crazy movie here. So, yeah. Taxi Driver. Now, I read reviews on this just to kind of see what the landscape of this movie is, and a lot of people it's always made fun of for being a film bro movie, right? Along with some other movies, it's a film bro movie, and let's be honest, a lot of the film bro movies they call film bro movies are still great movies. Let's just judge the movie for what it is, not for who likes it. I know originally it's hard to do that sometimes. Fan bases can destroy a movie because you feel like they're liking it for the wrong reasons or whatever. As long as people enjoy films, I'm fine. But, and I do think that is a quality of it. People see the movie and they see the crazy ending and the violence, and the lines that De Niro has are super iconic. The Bernard Herrmann score is one of my favorites. I used to whistle it all the time. It was always stuck in my head. It's a fantastic score. I think his last score, isn't it? His last score? I know that Larry Cohen was with Bernard Herrmann the night before he died and actually went and I think identified the body or seen the body and everything like that with his wife. I can't remember the details on that, but yeah. And I think he did the score for It's Alive, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and he was working on the score for God Told Me To, possibly. Whatever, I'm not going to get into Bernard Herrmann stuff, but obviously the composer for Psycho and among other movies. Great score. Actually, Taxi Driver owes a lot to its score. And Martin Scorsese, before this, had done Mean Streets with De Niro and Keitel, and he would go on to do all the crime films, the gangster films. And I think a lot of people think Taxi Driver is that. They're like, this is just going to be a bunch of mob movies. And it's not. I love the mob movies, but this is not. It's a character study. It's a look at a damaged, weird, kind of isolated, lonely man that doesn't really fit into society and doesn't know where to fit into society. And in a lot of ways, you see him like mimicking people, and I never noticed how much he does that. Like he stands by the guard, and the guy protecting Palpatine or whatever, which obviously was a name that would be used later or elongated to make the Senator Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine, whatever you want to say. But no, it's just a very strange character. De Niro has always been really good at playing these kind of weird kind of strange people, like in Cape Fear or King of Comedy, just unsettling people that I just scare the fuck out of me, to be honest. And so Travis here, you see in some dialogue that he was recently in Vietnam in the military, from your understanding, and he's trying to get a job as a cab driver because he can't sleep. Joe Spinella is the dispatcher, which is a great little scene in there. Probably gives him the job because he was also a Marine. So he gets the job and he starts driving around, and we get to this inner monologue, seeing the New York streets and everything. And these New York scenes heavily inspired, all the kind of crazy grindhouse horror films that we would love, like Maniac and New York Ripper and all, Basket Case and King of New York. All these fucking movies from all these directors, I think they owe a great deal to Taxi Driver. I think that it became such a cool thing to showcase 42nd Street, to showcase the grime and the craziness of Taxi Driver. And there's a huge kind of elephant in the room here, right? There's like a lot of racial tension in Taxi Driver, and you could see it in De Niro looking at a lot of African American characters, the hate and stuff. And I think that it's a realistic thing for a lot of young men that don't know their place to be influenced by bad things and see something and just assume like everybody's like that. All this kind of fucked up shit like that, right? And De Niro, I think, is a very realistic character, a very troubled character. Unfortunately, people idolize, the mohawk and the things, but the performance is stellar, unnerving, scary. So he doesn't really know how to fit in with society. Brooks and Sybil Shepherd are working. They're basically canvassing to get this guy elected. I think was it senator, and he's going to eventually run for president. I think he's senator, he's running for president, or something along those lines. But they're canvassing for him, and he becomes infatuated with Sybil Shepherd and has this really bad relationship where it doesn't work out. And you're like watching it, and it's just so awkward and everything like that, and that rejection like moves on it and fucks him up, like to the point where I think like a lot of people who have gone through like some sort of breakup and they take it so seriously, like it's the end of the fucking world, right? Like nobody's ever felt this kind of way, or this felt so alone. And I think that a lot of people identify with that loneliness, with that misery that they supposedly feel like they're part of it, right? So he kind of starts focusing on like this 14-year-old prostitute, Jodie Foster, whose pimp is Harvey Keitel. And that's what leads to this crazy, violent climax that you don't really see coming because the movie is quiet. There's a lot of scenes of talking, a lot of slice of life, a lot of scenery and narration. And he's unhinged. He's just not right. And there's a great scene where he's talking to Peter Boyle. And they're having this conversation. It's so awkward. It feels so real. And he's just like, I got ideas in my head, ideas, And he's going through this. And it's a brilliant acting. It's just, I feel like his pathos in his face and his eyes and just the way the dialogue's delivered is realistic. And I think the movie is brilliant for that aspect alone. Of course, it has that incredibly violent, insane shootout, which kind of, that idea that someone is dangerous or strange, getting that like headline, that storied hero thing at the end is wild as well. And I know a lot of people believe that De Niro actually dies in the end of Taxi Driver. Travis dies in the end of it, and he actually is just kind of fantasizing it. But when Sybil Shepherd gets in that cab and he kind of, it's maybe her like extending that branch, like, hey, did you want to see stuff like that? And he kind of just ignores her and says, see ya. It's like ultimate revenge for like a incel or something like that, right? He's like, oh, she broke up that ultimate revenge thing like that, and anyways, I just think the movie's brilliant. I think that it's saying a lot. I think it's nuanced in a lot of ways. I don't think there's a definitive thing that it's saying. I just think there's a lot of realistic stuff in here and just tons of things that inspired. Hell, I know like the couple years before you have like Death Wish in 74, and that's the vigilantism. There's a little bit of that in here too. So it's not like it's complete there. And I do think Death Wish helped kind of put that gritty New York on the map too. And it's not like Taxi Driver was the first movie to fucking do that, but it definitely inspired that look and that style, right? Hell, even Taxi Hunter, the Hong Kong kind of film community, would come out and make their own deal with Anthony Wong and Herman Yau's movie, right? Where it's like, he's not a taxi driver, he's a taxi hunter. He kills taxi drivers. So it's just a super memorable movie. And I know Carando, the director who did stuff like, oh geez, what is that one? A Gunwoman. he made his kind of thing, Maniac Driver, which is kind of inspired by Taxi Driver. So, and the horror world, it's there as well. I mean, Taxi Driver is one of the most influential movies ever made, with one of the most brilliant scores ever made, which is one of the craziest director cameos ever by Martin Scorsese himself. De Niro's fantastic. Jodie Foster's fantastic. Their back and forth in the diner is brilliant. When she talked about that scene was really great. How she was just mentioning, he came and picked me up and just got comfortable with me, and how he acts and how he develops his character. And Keitel's really good in this too. Just a scummy fucking piece of shit. He's like 30, just like controlling this 14-year-old pimp, but he's great in it. He's perfect in it. Sport is what they call him, but he's great too. And I just love the whole cast. And it's funny in the movie. There's a point where he's like, these two, Peter Boyle says like the expletive for gay people. And it's like, these guys get in my cab and they start fighting. And he's like, and now I say, I don't care what you do in the privacy of the home. And it's like in 1976, a New York cab driver being so progressive. That's progressive for a New York cab driver, I imagine. But it's just, I love Peter Boyle. Always did great stuff. The Friends of Eddie Coyle and just Young Frankenstein, and everybody loves Raymond. He's a great actor, always been. So it's just filled with tons of great performances here. It's got fucking Albert Brooks to burn, who's great in here too. But yeah, Taxi Driver, one of the best of all time. I don't know if there's a 4K, but I'll certainly buy it. Martin Scorsese, one of the best directors of all time. And I always find it amazing, right? Could Martin Scorsese do something like a Del Toro? Because Del Toro's one of my favorites too. And everybody's like, it's pretty different. And then he does Hugo, and you're like, he directed fucking Hugo. This guy can do anything. Scorsese can do anything. It's just wild, but fucking great. Taxi Driver's great. All right, let's get into those 1982 movies. And the first up is a rewatch. I didn't know this bad boy was getting a stateside release, but Deaf Crocodile, who's putting out some crazy, wild European movies and just doing some really good art films, just a lot of challenging movies, and I mean that as a positive, right? And this is The Outcast, and this was an Irish film from 1982, directed by an English director. The director I don't know, Robert Wynne Simmons, but I've obviously seen this a couple times. So The Outcast. Now, this is always listed as a folk horror movie, and it does have fantasy elements, and it has certainly folk and mythology and some fantastical elements, but to call it straight folk horror, I don't really know. I do think it has a tinge of folk horror, but I do think it is over and kind of adjacent to that, where I think some people that enjoy folk horror would definitely love this. So the title alone kind of explains who the people are. We have this girl who doesn't really fit in with society. Her family are kind of outcasts. She's really bizarre and weird, and there's no mother, no matriarch of the family, just a patriarch, and has like 2-3 daughters. And this I don't know if you'd call her slow or on the spectrum or something like that. She just doesn't necessarily get along with the other people in the town. This is before the famine, so it's not during the famine, the potato famine, but it's a little bit before. So there's a lot of this kind of pagan mixture with Christianity and all that kind of stuff, like superstition, of course, but also these weird pagan rituals, kind of how it was adopted into Christianity to a certain extent to make a lot of the people be more comfortable with switching over, whatever it is, or just old traditions that held on. So there's this weird kind of backdrop. It's also a gorgeous looking movie, although it's incredibly cold. I can't believe I forgot this movie. I wanted to mention it too. But there's one that came out last year that was about this poor woman, The Devil's Bath. And it has a lot of similarities to that. This kind of outcast, outsider a person who ends up just having a miserable experience. And I do think it's very much like The Devil's Bath, less horror than that, though. And that movie's kind of in this vein, too. It's not necessarily a horror film until a couple acts. But, so what happens is, one time there's like kind of a big celebration. Her sister gets married to this other farmer. They kind of hook it up. And the father is a little leery about this, but of course they end up loving each other and getting married. But the acts of this main character, this sister, kind of start to stir things because she starts to see this kind of mysterious man who's on the outskirts of town, who is banished. We don't know that at first, and he starts to do these kind of weird fantasy, this ritual kind of thing, like this somewhat magic, to kind of screw with a couple people, and they start to freak out about it. And she starts to have this kind of relationship, kind of love affair with this guy. It's very short and brief, but still. And she kind of makes herself an outcast. And her family too, and it just gets darker and sadder from there. The movie's very slow moving, very slow paced, beautiful music, beautiful genuine music. It seems genuine for the time. The locations are great. You can think of it rainy Ireland period piece kind of shit. You just know the cold. You watch it and your bones are cold immediately. You're just like, oh, I know that cold, that rainy cold, where you're like, I'm outside and I'm going to get sick and I may die any second. But the performance from the lead is fantastic. It's just rough living, man. Living back then sucked. Fucking horrible. But as far as the features, there's a bunch of them. And long, too. New video interview with director-writer Robert Wynn Simmons. And this is like an hour and 23 minutes. Some of the audio is a little hard to hear, especially the director has an accent. He's a little older. He probably doesn't know Zoom too well. So it's a little shaky on that. But the interviewer asks a lot of good questions and everything like that. And he's actually the owner of Deaf Crocodile. So Dennis Bartok, yeah. So new video interview with composer Steve Cooney. And I love this. It's about 48 minutes long. And he talks about his roots, how he came from Australia, how he went to Ireland and stuff like that, and how he worked with Aboriginal people to develop his musical taste and all this kind of stuff. Lived a very interesting life, has a very interesting talking about how he composed the music, how he worked with the music, how he mixed and all these things like that. Now, if you like music, if you like stuff like that, I think that people really enjoy this. Steve Cooney's a very interesting guy, and he goes into depth about this stuff, so I enjoyed hearing that. Video essay by producer and Professor Rod Stoneman, former head of the Bourne Scallion. Nope, not saying that. The Irish Film Board, and a journalist and physical media expert, Ryan Verrill, disconnected. This talks a little bit about, I can't remember exactly on this. There's so much information here, but I do remember this one. Oh, yeah, no, there's something missing here. Yeah, there's that one there, too. But just kind of talks a little bit about the making of this stuff and the director and how this got made and whatnot and its impact, I think. I watched this, but when I think of it, it completely blanks my head. But I remember it being tons of information. All this information is bleeding into one blob. So I'm like, what was what? What was what? You know what I mean? And then we have a bunch of shorts, which are pretty weird, pretty strange, ranging in years here and ranging in length. This one here is, I'll say this, for the Judgment of Ebion, Prophecies of William Blake. This is basically just locations of Britain and stuff with the poems of William Blake. Then we have The Scrolls, 25 minutes, 1964. Most ambitious early film surreal overtones of the 1960 series is The Prisoner and The Avengers. Visually, I think it looks the most like The Outcasts. There's a lot of countryside and things like that. Bomb Disposal. This is a silly little thing with Sammy Davis Jr. where it's goofy. It's very short, 5 minutes. The Greatest All-Star Advertal of Time. 2 minutes, the Madcap comic short featuring Charlton Heston. This is like the fake cigarette commercial thing where everybody's catching cigarettes and smiling. And then we have this one here, Ardita El Delvolo, eerie ghost story shot in the derelict mansion once owned by Percy and Mary Shelley. Frankenstein, that's 15 minutes. That's the most horror-related big fight at the end. But a great release of a movie, even if I can't remember what features are what, because my brain is goo. But that one, the one I can't remember is narrated, and he talks a lot about stuff like that. Now, I cannot remember exactly what he gets into on this. And I've sued guys, when you watch all these features like this, sometimes you just like, I cannot remember everything. But this is a great movie. It's not the easiest to watch, though. I think it's like Deaf Crocodile's MO. It's like, this is a great movie. But it's like, and I don't want to say it's homework. It's like feeding your brain. Almost every time I watch something from that, it's like feeding your brain. I do think Fila Day is their best release because that's a personal favorite of mine, and I was so happy to see it get released. But The Outcast is a nice one. BFI released it overseas, and that's the only release I thought they had when I watched it. I didn't even know about that release before I watched this. So, and then seeing it remastered in Blu-ray, I think it was shot in 16 and blown up to 35. Does that sound right? I think it is a low-budget film, but it's just been kind of awesome to see this kind of cleaned up and everything like that. That's The Outcast. Okay, this next one here is kind of crazy. It's not really horror, but I felt it was horror adjacent enough to watch it. And I'm not going to do it with every sword and sandal movie, not every fantasy movie, because I'll be doing the 80s my entire life if I do that. But I felt like I had to do this one, and this is from Don Coscarelli, 1982, The Beastmaster. And I popped in this new, this old VS University, I think is their line here, no VHS Ultra. And this is the first release they had, and I still hadn't watched it, so I was like, man, I'm going to pop in this Beastmaster. Amazing release here, and it looks gorgeous. So much beautiful artwork here. Now, Don Coscarelli was a director who started off on independent features like Jim the Greatest, Kenny and Company, and then he directed Phantasm in 1979. That was his kind of big call to fame. He made this when he was super young. He was probably in his early 20s when he made Phantasm. Of course, it became a cult item. It had 4 sequels, 3 of which he directed, besides the original, so he directed 4 of those altogether. But after he had made those movies and they made money and did well, he kind of went into the studio world with Beastmaster. So, now, a lot of people call this a Conan ripoff, which came out the same year. It was directed by John Milius, of course, based on the classic comic book Conan the Barbarian, 82. Great movie. Might rewatch that for 82. I recently watched it, so I don't feel the need to completely dive in. But as in the early 80s, we had a lot of these sword and fantasy movies, like, Excalibur and Dragon Slayer, and the same year we had Sword and the Sorcerer, which is listed as horror, but I don't see it being that much more horror than Beastmaster or Conan the Barbarian. So they claim this was like a ripoff of Conan, but it literally came out like 2 months afterwards, and that's just not how movies work, guys. It's not really, because they had to make this, everything like that. So this here stars Mark Singer, who's kind of made famous by this. He was in the show V, the kind of sci-fi show, and I think some other TV stuff, but I don't really know Mark Singer much from besides Beastmaster. Tanya Roberts, who is in Tourist Trap and some other things like that. Tourist Trap's a great movie. And we have Rip Torn as the villain here, great, with his weird giant nose. John Amos, great actor as well, from like Coming to America and Hologram Man, one of my favorites. But John Amos has been in tons of stuff, and he's really good in this one. Who else pops up in here? I think we got the one of them. I did notice the Buddy from Halloween 3 is in here. The guy who sells all the masks. He pops up in a small role. So we have a sword and sandal movie, a fantasy movie, sword and sorcery movie kind of deal. So in the very beginning, of course, we got the bad guy. He gets an awful... These 4 witches he has. Beautiful women with this nasty disguise on them. And that's kind of where we have a mixture here, right? Like, we play a lot with that. Like, we see like these beautiful women and then turn around and they're like witches. And that's fun. But they tell Rip Torn that he's like Malix. He's like a sorcerer, and he like pray. They all worship this evil god kind of deal, and they have all these soldiers that go around the countryside and kill everybody who doesn't. So they tell him that you're going to be killed by this king's first son. It's the prophecy. And he says, "Bullshit! I'll kill that king and his kid." So he sets out to destroy this entire village, and they get the baby. They pour like a serum on the baby, the mother to be, and they get the baby. They try to kill him, but he ends up getting saved. And he has this tattoo, and he ends up in the wilderness, and he learns that he has this special connection with animals as he grows up. He has a falcon, or is it a hawk, or an eagle, or something that he has with him. He has these couple of ferrets that he meets eventually, and he has a tiger that's spray-painted black to look like a panther that, is going to help him throughout his entirety of this mission and everything like that. He's basically running around on a loincloth. Everybody is in a fucking loincloth in this movie, including John Amos and Mark Singer, and I was just like, that's kind of hard to do, be like a grown-ass man running around on a loincloth and everything like that. I mean, like Conan does it, of course, and stuff like that, but like, I don't think I'd want to do that throughout the whole fucking movie. And I guess it was really cold, according to Don Coscarelli and the special features. So you know how these kind of stories go. He doesn't know he's his son, the next in line to be the king, and he wants to take out these bad guys because they're after Tanya Roberts, who he basically falls in love with, and who wouldn't in the medieval times, right? But yeah, so they have this ragtag group of people that eventually form together to fight against this evil sorcerer and his minions, and along the way they run into all sorts of bandits, including these crazy bat bird things that dissolve people, which is insane. These berserker guys that have some sort of worm in their brain. The ferrets that he has are adorable, and they're awesome. They run around, they do tricks, and I think that was a huge part of this movie's popularity was due to the ferrets. I think that a lot of people loved them, and I remember the ferrets. And this is a movie that was always on TV, and I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched it in its entirety. This might have been the first time I watched it in its entirety. The 4K looks fucking gorgeous. I was like, man, this movie sounds great. It looks great. And I'm going to be honest with you, I knew it was a cult movie. I like Don Coscarelli's films, everything from Phantasm all the way up until John dies at the end. So I'm a fan of Bubba Hotep. But I didn't really know, because he kind of hates this movie because it was taken away from him, not his cut. But I didn't expect it to be this good. I expected it to be kind of a cult movie. A lot of people love it, but I'd just be okay with it. I thought it was great. I was very entertained with it. It was one of the best sword and fantasy movies I've seen, sword and sandal movies I've seen. I like Fulci's Conquest. I like Conan the Barbarian. Sword and Sorcerer is fine, but a lot of them are crummy, especially when you get in the late 80s or mid 80s. You get some real shit bombs. Like, what was the one that Jim Wynorski co-directed with Jack Hill? That's a piece of shit, if I remember. Not great. Sorcerer. I think it's just called Sorcerer. That's not a great movie. But, we got a lot of the, I'd probably produced by Corman movies and stuff. They're just not that great. But this one is really fun. Spawned 2 sequels, of course. Not released on Blu-ray. I bet they're sitting back here, though. I bet I do have 2 of the sequels sitting up here. I know you guys are going to get mad. Like, Dave, what are you doing? Stop standing up and showing movies. I should have been more prepared than this. Yes, I'm wearing pajama pants. It's a comfortable day. But, yeah, so we have parts 2 of VHS and part 3. And these always popped up on television when I was a kid, and I remember always watching them. But I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched these in their entirety either. But yeah, that's his Beastmaster 2 and 3. Maybe we'll get a release on those. I have to put them back because I'm a crazy person. But yeah, this thing was loaded with features. I listened to the commentary with Joe Lynch, which is a new one, and Don Coscarelli. He does a lot of information. Joe Lynch loves this movie. He's a director himself, had Movie Crypt. And then I watched the hour and 10-minute making of by Elijah Drenner, who does a lot of special features, which is also great. Had a bunch of people involved and interviewed with it, including John Amos, who seems like an awesome guy, talking about Ray Bradbury and sci-fi, and I was like, yes, cool dude. Mark Singer, Tanya Roberts. Tanya Roberts is dead. John Amos is dead. So many of these people have passed away. Don Coscarelli's in here too. Just a bunch of features on this bad boy. Deluxe set here. 3-disc in here. We have the 1 in 4K, and then we have them on Blu-ray as well. So what do we got here? Commentary track with Don Coscarelli and writer Paul Pepperman, moderated by filmmaker Joe Lynch. Audio archival commentary track with Don Coscarelli and Paul Pepperman. Blu-ray, The Beastmaster Chronicles, brand new feature-length documentary of making by Elijah Drenner, the saga of the Beastmaster, and archival making of documentary by Perry Martin, Super 8, home movie shot by James Dodson with audio commentary by Don Coscarelli and Paul Pepperman. Alternate updated visual effects supervised by director. Outtakes, stills, promotional archival material gallery, original theatrical trailer, newly scanned and restored 4K from its 35mm interpositive. The Blu-rays are Region, and it does have surround sound 5.1 mix. Great stuff. Great movie, a lot of fun, fucking hilarious, spray painted tiger, just a lot of good stories, entertaining, epic kind of movie. Beastmaster. Check it out. Okay, here's one here called Lullaby of Death, or for my daughter's 7th birthday, and this is Masamura's last directed film from 1882, of course, who did Blind Beast and Play It Cool and Irizumi. So a good director, good films. Lullaby of Death, I was looking at the reviews, and people did not like this, and I was like, oh, I liked it. I really enjoyed it. So it's kind of more of a mystery kind of story, drama, detective kind of angle, but there is some horror elements here. So Lullaby of Death, this is a period piece at points, and then kind of jumps into more, I guess it, modern to a certain extent, well, 82 at the time. But in the very beginning, you have a young daughter, and she's traumatized by her mother. The mother commits suicide, and we kind of learn that this daughter is going to be the kind of killer in the film grown up, but we got to find out who it's going to be. So we kind of cut to these private eyes, these private investigators. This one guy's onto a case, and everybody in this like the politicians and businessmen are all listening to this person that does like palm readings, and they're giving them advice and everything like that, and they're taking all these big decision advice from a palm reader. So this one worker there is gonna like kind of reveal to this private eye or reporter, investigative reporter, what the fuck's going on, a big secret. She ends up getting murdered brutally in a really nasty kind of way with kind of a weird kind of knife. So this reporter is instantly intrigued with this, and he starts to dig deep, and he has his young reporter friend in there, and they start to talk more and more at this bar, and the old reporter ends up getting involved with the woman who runs this bar and all these kind of things like that, and more is kind of unveiled and more things like that, and you really start to dig deeper, and as more layers are revealed, you realize it's not really what it seems, and we constantly flash back to this daughter and this mother and everything like that. And at first you think this person's a villain, or this is revenge, or you live your life for revenge, and as it kind of unfolds, it gets more and more tragic through every reveal, and by the end of it, you're like, this is one of the goddamnedest, saddest stories I've ever heard in my life. Lullaby of Death, it's really well acted, it's really well directed, the mystery and intrigue is perfect. I thought this was great. I thought this was a very good kind of mystery horror film called Lullaby of Death. Highly recommended if you can find it to watch. I really liked it. Okay, this next one here is a Nakatsu erotic films, or I'm pretty sure it is. It's got to be Nakatsu. And this is from the director of Flower and Snake. This is Slave Contract. Classy title, yeah. So, Slave Contract. Basically, this follows a story of two kind of higher-ups. One is a political analysis or analyst. And so he's got some respectability about him, and his wife is, I can't remember her job, but she kind of works with a lot of like liberal arts people and things like that. So they are definitely more on the left-leaning kind of liberal kind of side about, the wife is actually directly working with an African-American woman about, like talking about like slavery and rights and all these kind of things like that. So what happens is the husband gets this package in the mail, and he opens it up, and it's this beautiful woman who's basically all bondaged up, and it reads a note that says, "I am your slave for 3 months. and the wife's like, what the fuck is this? And he's like, well, we should keep her. Why not? We can make her do something. And of course he wants to, have sex with her, all sorts of things like that. And as it progresses, he treats her worse and worse and worse. And the wife, he starts to incorporate sex with the wife in there, and she doesn't seem like she likes it, but she seems to be intrigued, and it starts to mess with her psyche, especially when she's talking to people with her job and all that kind of shit like that. And we learn to find out that there's this whole kind of underground world of this where women are kidnapped and turned into slaves and then sold to the highest bidder for 3 months, and they have to do all these kind of things like that. While I was watching, I was like, oh shit, this is The Bad Man. This is the movie The Bad Man that I was in by Scott Shermer. I was like, this is the kind of the same story. This is well shot, and there's a lot of framing stuff, especially at the very end. There's this big kind of auction sex party that gets really risque and crazy and wild. I thought Slave Contract was really good, Nikatsu erotic film. And of course, it happens what you think is going to happen, right? Somebody's going to become obsessed, and somebody does something I didn't expect, but it's really fucked up. And it says a lot of fucked up shit, I guess, if you're looking at it for life messages. I wouldn't recommend that, but Slave Contract, good Nikatsu erotic films. Definitely got some bondage and some horrible things in there. I think this is the one where I was watching it, and the first 5 minutes, oh, there's an enema. Of course there's an enema within the first 10 minutes of a Nikatsu erotic film, but we got to get right into it. It's only 70 minutes, so why not start with an enema? Eat your heart out, water power. Okay, the next one it's not necessarily a TV. Yeah, it's a TV miniseries. I call it a TV miniseries, and this is The Hound of Baskervilles. Now, this is, of course, the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, Sherlock Holmes story, made into numerous versions. The most popular to me is the 1959 Hammer version with Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and who plays old Watson in that one? Is it? I knew it the other day. It was on the tip of my tongue. Is it Andre Morel? I can't remember off the top of my head. Morel, I think it is. But so that's the most famous to me. But it was also, I think, a 39 version. There's an 83 version. There's, so many versions of The Hounds of Baskervilles, right? Super common. But I like to watch some of these remakes or renditions from different years, 82. Now, this is not necessarily a horror story here. If you know the story, of course, in the beginning, this old man is kind of going on a walking path, and there's these loud noises and hounds you possibly think, and it gives him a heart attack, and he dies. He's dead of fear, you think. He dies on this path. Somebody contacts Sherlock Holmes and says, listen, there's a great scene where him and Watson go back and forth about, who left this cane here, and it's very fun, and deductive reasoning, all that shit like that. Tom Baker plays Sherlock Holmes. I'm not a big Doctor Who fan. I don't know anything about it. Don't hate it. Don't know anything about it, but he played the fourth Doctor Who. He's Doctor Who for a very long time in a lot of projects, so that's his call to fame for a lot of people, I would say. He's done some other TV work as well. The director worked mostly in TV himself. But, so this guy shows up and tells him the story of the Hound of Baskervilles, and he's like, that sounds like crap, and he says, well, no, this is a whole thing. A whole family been terrorized by these things on the moors, this dog, and it trails all the way back to this evil guy that was killed and all these kind of things like that in the family, and it goes after the family lineage. So of course he's interested. He wants to try to save the next in line to receive this money because he's worried that the Hound of Baskervilles will strike again. Sherlock Holmes sends Watson to do most of his work and everything like that, and we have a lot of stories on the moors. We have a possible love story blossoming, but nobody or everybody is not who they seem. There's a kind of side thing with an escaped criminal. So we have all that kind of stuff going on. The ending here is pretty good. Don't go out on the moors alone, of course, if anybody's ever seen American Werewolf in London. But this one's good. A classic story. This version is not as good as the 59 Hammer version, but what would be? I think Terrence Fisher did the 59 Hammer version. I think that's one of their better movies, honestly, is that The Hound of Baskervilles. I like that one. This one's good. It's not bad. It's the same fucking story, though, so how bad could it be? You'd have to really fuck this story up to make it bad. I don't know how you would, but this one's pretty good. It was on BritBox. I think it was for the BBC. That's how I watched it. Got checked it out and got a subscription to BritBox to check this one out. So it's good. Worth watching if you like this story. Okay, the Patreon pick here is Abbott and Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. This title to me kind of throws me off because, I've heard other people say stuff like, well, they put it in the trades and it will say this and who it stars and stuff. So I feel like this is one of the titles. I think I've even maybe heard that at one point that this title originally was not Abbott Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. It was just Abbott Costello meet the killer or something like that, and even made it even longer, and a lot of titles will list this as Bud Costello and Lou Abbott meet, or is it Lou Costello and Bud Abbott, or Bud Abbott and Lou Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. It's like, that's a fucking mouthful. Same director as Abbott Costello, Meet Frankenstein or Meet the Monsters, whichever you prefer. The best of these movies for sure. And African Screams is another Abbott Costello kind of picture. So this one was made towards the end of the Abbott Costello movies. Last year, I think that the two horror ones were made. Maybe this and The Mummy are made the same year. I can't remember. But this one I had never seen. Love Boris Karloff, of course. He played The Mummy. He played Frankenstein's monster. He's in a slew of other movies too, right? Millions of movies, Universal Pictures. So what happens here is Costello and Abbott both work at this hotel. Abbott is more like the kind of the hotel policeman or some shit like that, like a security guard, and Costello is a bellhop. There is kind of an asshole guy that comes up, and he is, I can't remember, I think he's a prosecutor or he's a possible judge or something along those lines, and the whole place is filled with a bunch of ex-cons, a bunch of untrustworthy motherfuckers, including Boris Karloff, who uses hypnotist. He's a hypnotist and a bad guy at the same time, and he's very much like his character in The Mummy, just on appearance, on quick appearance, kind of doing a strange, kind of foreign kind of style character, as a lot of these Universal Pictures would do. So what happens is he ends up dead. And all signs point to Costello. The cops think it is. And, of course, Costello is going to fuck himself over, constantly make himself look worse like he did it. It's hilarious. The humor and stuff, very vaudeville. If you guys know, Three Stooges style, Laurel and Hardy kind of humor, the Three Stooges. I bet the Abbott Costello are. But Abbott's going to try to help him get out of it. There's bodies that end up piling up. They keep moving the bodies. I don't know how the bodies got here. And he keeps covering. It's funny. It's not their best movie, of course. The Frankenstein one's much better. And I haven't seen The Mummy in years, so I don't know if I've seen all of them, but I've seen Frankenstein the Frankenstein and the Mummy ones a bunch of times, and I don't think it's as good as the Frankenstein one, not nearly. But then you don't have the powerhouses of Dracula and Frankenstein and the fucking Wolfman in there either. But Karloff is a small role. It's a fun role. It's a goofy role. There's a good gag where he hypnotizes Costello, and it's a kill the man in the mirror, and he wants him to kill himself, but the way he's looking at the mirror, it's actually, Boris Karloff. So he starts chasing Karloff with a knife. Funny gags like that. At the end, they end up in this big cave, and there's this fucking ridiculous set piece. There's a fucking bear in a suit. It's silly. It's fun. It's entertaining. I always get a giggle out of these kind of movies. I'm a Three Stooges guy. So after this, I was like, I feel like watching a couple Three Stooges shorts, so I popped those in and enjoyed them. But, I watched the one, of course, where they... Mo ends up being Hitler, and they are just complete babbling fucking idiots, that I always love that one. But, so it's great to watch. It is kind of things like that. And that was funny, because Laurel and Hardy, somebody picked a couple of those for Patreon picks, and they were the guys I wasn't familiar with. I was familiar with the Stooges and Costello, Abbott Costello. So I grew up watching that stuff. But Laurel and Hardy weren't around when I was a kid. I might have seen them here and there, but I've always been more of a Three Stooges and Abbott Costello guy. That's more my style. But I did like Laurel and Hardy. This one, I did enjoy. It's fun. And it's not really a horror film. It's almost more like, I don't even say film noir, but all the cast of characters are all good and all fun. And Costello is just so charming. And you got to have Abbott in here to play the straight guy. They work well together. Enjoyable. I'm glad it was picked as a Patreon pick, and it's good stuff. All right, let's get these questions, comments, and concerns, all that jazz. Tipsy Bones, great video as always. Thank you. Beyond Sour Ground. As an aside, Mrparka reviews crappy kids movies needs to be a new segment on the show. And he continues, hey Mrparka, I don't know if you have a deadline for posting comments, but I had some thoughts on last week's video. I wanted to follow up with you. I do not have a deadline. So I hope that's not a problem. Sorry if it's too much. Nope. So I consider myself pretty much a completist when it comes to 80s horror, though certainly not as much of a completist as you've been with 8082, but I obviously intrigued by Psychic TV First Transmission, having never heard of it. Until you started describing what it was like, lol. Like you, I couldn't find much information on the production of the video, although there is some information out there on the underground music group, The Temple of Psychic Youth, which was allegedly more so a group of young occultists rather than an actual music group. I'd be fascinated to learn more about the production of the video, and although I found the full 4-hour video online, I absolutely will not be watching that. I understand completely. People could call me a hypocrite because I give films like Sallow, Cannibal Holocaust, or Goodbye Uncle Tom a pass, but mono movies or fetish horror films don't work for me, and seeing genuine violence or death doesn't interest me. To me, it's a cop-out, jump scare, or of the confrontational horror genre. Fetishes are generally repulsive to anyone who doesn't have those fetishes, so it's just gross out cheap shot. I do remember the disturbing era of horror in the late 2000s, though, where the underground horror temporarily became kind of mainstream. And you're one of the only people I've heard mention that era. I was making YouTube videos back then as well. I've had a lot of different usernames over the years, and I attribute it to guys like 81 Oak Ridge hyping these ultra-disturbing movies with the horror community. For some reason, I specifically remember talking with you about Slaughtered Vomit Dolls back in the day when you could send private messages on YouTube. Isn't that a blast from the past? Indeed. It's one of those few films I've actually turned off when I realized that it wasn't really a movie, but mostly homemade views of some poor drug-addicted bulimic girl cobbled together with intense music video style editing. It's sickening, but it's also boring and categorically not horror, even art to me. How Lucifer Valentine developed a cult fan base with what seemed to be predominantly be female horror fans, I'll never understand. That being said, though, I do want to mention that I never judge you or anyone else for checking out these kind of films, and every horror fan goes through the seeking disturbing horror movie phase. I'm surprised we haven't invented a term for that yet. Yeah. It's like chasing the dragon of the horror film world. But just before I go on about all this other stuff, I'm not really into a lot of the extreme film. Like, I don't mind extreme stuff in cinema. And I don't even want to say this because this gets the wrong impression, because I do like when films go extreme if it's called for it, like Serbian Film or Cannibal Holocaust or Men Behind the Sun. Although sometimes they make me sick, but sometimes I want to feel sick. It's like, oh man, but I'm not sitting here like yeah, sometimes I will laugh because it's so appalling. You know what I mean? You're just like, I can't believe they fucking did that. I just have a really warped sense of humor as well. But I wouldn't say I like it because the extreme subject matter, but maybe in spite of it sometimes, right? On the Psychic TV was a curio for me to watch. I don't want to watch that ever again. I never will. Same thing with SBK Despair. Never again. Never will I. And to each their own, yes. But when movies like A Lady in the Sea of Blood, I was bringing that up for example because it's one of the worst pieces of shit of all time. It's just a lady in a shower with fake. It's just fucking stupid. And it was, it's crap. It's not a movie. And I get tired. Sometimes even artsy films that go far too artsy and they don't really have anything. Like, I actually will never watch any Lucifer Valentine movies ever. One and done. And to a certain extent back then, I could appreciate some of the editing and style and the special effects. But to me, there's not much there. And the more I heard the commentaries, him talk about what it was about, it seemed more like bullshit to me. So I even got more annoyed with them. And then the reputation of a lot of things that happen and stuff like that. It's like, I have zero interest ever watching any of this guy's fucking work too. And Marian Dora is another director that I have no interest in watching anything ever again. And as I get older, a lot of the new movies I just have no interest in watching. And I know it's shitty. It's just I have a certain taste for old films. And I will watch old films, even if the subject matter is something I don't normally like, because I'm looking for things and looking for inspirations that happen to the future of horror. It's just Omar looking at it as not like a historian, because I wouldn't call myself that, a curious person that wants to find every piece of the puzzle. Like, look at me as Frank from Hellraiser. I'm just kidding, but you know what I'm saying in that kind of aspect. And I never try to hype up things anymore. Back in the day, you're always like, oh, this is crazy. I can't wait to review this and talk about how fucked up it is. But like now, as you get older, you're just like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, and I try to, even the extreme subject matter, I may give a warning like, yeah, it's pretty nasty, guys. Maybe you don't want to see this if you don't want to see this. But at the same time, I'm going to treat the kids movie as much as I'm going to talk about it the same way I talk about something else. I'm going to try to. Although sometimes certain movies you have nothing to say about. It's just the way you feel or the way you remember or something like that. Some movies don't really get me to have a conversation about. I didn't expect me to talk about Taxi Driver that long, but it's just Taxi Driver is a fucking endlessly interesting movie in terms of its filmmaking, everything about it. Even if the movie I hated it, there's so much still to talk about and interesting aspects about the movie, right? I just discuss about it and all that stuff. But some movies don't bring that to me. Or maybe I just had a bad experience with it, or just had a bad time watching it at the time. It's so... But I do not want to go out and just talk about an extreme horror film like, that was a time and a place, and I don't blame myself, and I don't blame 81 Oak Ridge, who I still talk to occasionally, and, he liked the extreme horror films, and he likes other films, too. It was a time and a place that we were all into that stuff, we were all watching that stuff, it almost became like a weird competition, right? Chasing that dragon to see what the fuck was going to be out there next. And then we hit like a plateau, I think, where it was just like, now we're just watching like fetish films or pornos from other countries, and I never got to that far. I wasn't going to watch like, what are some of those like, I can't think of the names, but like Squirmfest. Now, not watching Squirmfest, guys. Just not fucking doing it. Why? Because at this point, we're not watching movies anymore. It's just like basically sending your friend like videos of a prolapse asshole or something. Like, okay, we got it. It's unappealing to look at. But as we go on a positive note, I really enjoyed your adult horror video with Joe Rubin. Those films are also really low priority on my watch list, but it was great to learn more about those films. The Phil Prince films are another example of movies where I find their production history fascinating, even though I have low interest in films themselves. I wish there was more information on how the adult horror films were distributed and what audience they played for. I imagine it had to be more expansive than 42nd Street, New York, especially with films like Satan's Baby Doll and Cafe Flesh. I would recommend you watch Satan's Baby Doll and Cafe Flesh. Satan's Baby Doll is out in a non-hardcore version, and it's a fun Italian horror film that you wouldn't even know is exactly a hardcore film. It's like in the caliber of, something like Strip Nude for Your Killer. Not as like polished, maybe. Not as polished as Strip Nude for Your Killer sounds like such a bad recommendation, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it is more of a movie, less of a porno. The Phil Prince movies and the Carter Stevens one from that are just straight porns. Like, it's just like, hey, what are we doing? Like, just like half-ass fucking Jersey accents coming in, like, hey, let's have sex. And it's just, they're not real. They're porns first. Same thing with The Babysitter. They're porns first. But Satan's Baby Doll is not a porn first. It's the movie first. And I would say Cafe Flesh is more of a film than a mix, 50-50. So, and Devil and Miss Jones, too, is also incredibly fun. You know, they're not high on my priority list as well. But I want to capture every aspect of horror that I can from that year. And I'm a weird completist in that way. You know, I've seen so many people cover the years, but they skip out a lot of things. They're like, well, I couldn't find this Hong Kong movie. So I'm going to fucking find it. And I'm going to watch it. Even if I got to read fucking crummy-ass subtitles. It's just something I want to do. I actually met Joe Rubin a few times in Vinderson's infancy when he came to Wasteland, along with some of the other early VS guys. And I found his knowledge of exploitation history impressive. I love the exploitation genre, but it's secondary to horror for me, and with him it seems the other way around. Anyway, I wish he elaborated more on what he means when he says he started watching adult films as a kid for non-Puritan purposes. I get that he watches them as art rather than smut, and I like films like Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and Sinful Door, for example, but I never felt the addition of hardcore footage made these films better, just sleazier. I feel like the transition from softcore roughies to X-rated exploitation is a murky side of film history I'm either undereducated on, or perhaps it's a subgenre I just don't get. So I'll ask you the same question about your interest, and since you're delving into these films now. I'm more of an exploitation guy. I'm more of a horror guy, but when we're talking about hardcore scenes in movies, it's more of a, I like this film in spite of the hardcore scenes. I don't mind a hardcore scene here and there, but when I'm watching something like Porno Holocaust or Erotic Nights of the Living Dead, I don't love the hardcore scenes. They're not my thing. They never were my thing. I do not hate them, but if I will try to judge the movie for what it is, but porno films are a weak point on me. You know what I mean? Like, it's not my investment, but I will watch them and check them out. And sometimes I'll see cool things in them. But when we're talking about like Satan's Baby Doll or Sinful Door for Thriller, I do think Thriller is one that I did watch the hardcore scenes first. I saw that version first. So maybe Thriller is one that I do actually prefer with the hardcore scenes. I don't know why. Probably just saw it way too young and it fuck with me. But a lot of the other ones, no, I don't. I prefer it just the uncut version, but not the added porn scenes, if that makes any sense. A lot of times they don't add shit. I would agree with you. Thanks for the comment. Interesting, great comment. Thanks, I appreciate it. Brendan Timmons. I think my last comment was deleted, as you said happens, but I wondered if you had heard of the new boutique label, Petroglyph Media. They're focusing in obscure South... turn the page. South American genre films. I got in and watched their first release, a Colombian double feature. It was fascinating. I actually went and bought it because of your recommendation. So I got them coming. The one of them I had on my Plex. The other one I did not. So yeah, I ordered those. The Nick Moore from Belgium. I also have an interest in any pre-Exorcist possession films, and the possession of Joel Delaney looks to be very interesting indeed. The older imprint release has a commentary by the late great Lee Gaiman, and was supposed to be a feature on an additional one with Kim Newman and Barry Forshaw, I believe, but that never happened. I need to check this one out regardless. It looks like awfully good cinema. I think you will enjoy it. I mostly enjoyed Scary Movie. The sequels all sucked ass, but that's what the cookie crumbles. That's the way the cookie crumbles, right? I'm not overly fond of the last Scream movies either. The franchise feels tired and more like pure naked cash grab. I actually haven't seen anything after Scream 3, so it's just the way I work. I do remember Scary Movie 2 having some fun shit in there. Questions. What's your favorite recent, can be 5 years or older, possession movie? I've always enjoyed Eli Roth's Exorcism, featuring an early Caleb Landry Jones performance. Oh boy, there was a couple that came on Netflix that I really liked, and I cannot remember it. I covered it like 3 years ago, where it's like the daughter is possessed and she's trying to seduce him, and it's really fucked up. Please, if somebody remembers that movie, it's on Netflix. That was a really good one as far as that's concerned, and that was a good one. Sorry I can't remember the title, but that's not my favorite subgenre, but that one was wild. Why is it so difficult to get parody movies right? Should they stick to mocking material that wasn't funny to begin with, like drama or horror? Because a comedy mocking another comedy feels kind of weird. Yeah, you're right about that, but the thing is, parodies and satire like that, they become outdated almost immediately, right? The jokes are outdated, so it's really a product of its time. And if you don't get that time, a lot of times they don't work that well. But something like Blazing Saddles, I think, is, if you're familiar with westerns, I think it's always funny, and also funny otherwise too, because they parodied a bunch of stuff in that movie. But that movie's just clever. It's funny on its own without the parody, just the dialogue. So which other Fulci film should get a 4K release next? We got Beyond's coming out. We got City of the Living Dead. We got New York Ripper. We got Zombie. We got Don't Torture a Duckling recently. Boy, oh boy. Maybe Lizard in a Woman's Skin is up. Maybe that one could be next. Or maybe, what else has one? Psychic's got one. So we got a lot of the good ones. Let's go Lizard in the Woman's Skin. I think that's next up for Fulci on 4K. That's it should be. Catch you on the quick side, Dave. Godspeed and good night, or whatever time of day it is as you read this. It's approaching evening. Pop Culture Massacre. Love the Airbud review, Dave. Haha, it was a favorite of mine growing up. I was 7 or 8 at the time, so perhaps more appealing to me, and I still enjoy rewatching it every couple years as a dose of nostalgia. Mason, what's up, Mason? Yeah, I get it. I was a couple years older than you, but there's movies that I have an affinity for that are probably bad, really bad. Garbage Pail Kids, yeah. Little Monsters. I don't know if it's bad. I don't think it's bad, but maybe somebody could tell me different. Masters of the Universe. But see, they still have an element of horror or fantasy or craziness to them. What kids... I mean, Toy Story I liked as a kid, and I was a little... But that was a good movie. Airbud, I don't know. I'm sure there's some that I like. Maybe if I popped in Baby's Day Out, I like that. Maybe I'll still like that. I don't fucking know. Maybe not. Martin VP, you put Venom, Pragnites, 100 Tears, Eating Miss Campbell, and Swamp Thing on my watch list. Thanks for another interesting episode. Thank you. And let me know what you think of them. Super Saiyan, Death Metal God. I was surprised 100 Tears had an after-credit sequence. Yep, it does. And it was pretty clever, actually. But my thoughts ended up being pretty similar to yours on it. Cool. I enjoy it. It's fun. And the end credit sequence is the first time I actually ever watched them. Hudson, 3838. Me after Susan George been bit by a venomous snake and needs a volunteer to suck the poison out. Get out of my way. It's going to be a busy day. Yeah, there we go. David Becker, SPK put out some unusual... Hey, what's up? Dr. Shock there. SPK put out some unusual albums in the 80s. Did you know the main founder, Graham Revell, became a fairly prolific Hollywood composer? I looked a little bit up and I saw a bunch of listings, but I completely forgot to mention that. It was a band I wasn't familiar with. I never heard of the band, but listening to the music and that little music video thing they were decent. I liked the music. I didn't dislike the music. But, after watching that thing, I was kind of like, I don't know if I need to dig into anything deeper they made in the films. It's pretty fucking nasty. Pretty gross. But, yeah, it looked like he had a nice career afterwards, which is really cool. Thanks for the info. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Got a bunch of comments, man. You guys are killing me over here. Ilk Vomit. I'll let you know when Monkey Trouble hits 4K. Don't bother. Hard pass. Ken Coakley. I forgot how good Venom is. The casting was great. Reed, Kinski, Hayden, Nicole Williamson, Susan George, and an almost unrecognizable Michael Gow. Yeah, he's in it for a bit role. He plays, actually, the snake wrangler on set is actually named after Michael Gow in that movie. Or Michael Gow is named after the snake wrangler on set. Michael Gow were individual actors that would attract me to any film. Kinski, Hayden, and Reed were famously alcoholics, so the director did a great job keeping them in line. He must have put a real black mamba in the liquor cabinet to keep them away from the hooch. It sure seems like that at times, especially when Reed goes for it. I love Sterling Hayden in The Godfather as well as King of Gypsies, which stars an unrecognizable Eric Roberts, who had reconstructive surgery after a car accident in '81. Hayden was approached to play Quint in Jaws, but had to turn it down because he was a tax exile. If he did Jaws or any movie in the U.S., the government would take his entire paycheck from what he owed the government. I heard that too, and I also heard that Reed was possibly approached. Don't know if that's true or not. Back to Venom, the movie was more of a suspense film with horror added to it. However, I did look around my hospital bed thinking I saw snakes. Now about Deep Blue Sea. It was my first time seeing Thomas Jane. Jaws is one of my favorite films of all time, so I got a charge out of the scene in the beginning when Thomas Jane swam with a tiger shark and pulled the license plate out of his mouth. I saw the film the day it opened. It wasn't as good as Jaws, but it's still pretty good. The scene where Michael Rappaport was bitten in half and his toe twitched haunted me for a long time. I like Stellar Skarsgård, who played the scientist whose arm was bitten off, because I liked Good Will Hunting. Can't remember if he has 2 sons or 3 who act now. Bill's obviously more successful after it and Nosferatu. Alexander is known for playing Randall Flagg. in the 2020 version of The Stand. Stellar is also remembered for playing Father Merrin in the Exorcist prequels. I remember that, actually, which is my opinion were underrated. A couple years ago, I did a mini marathon of their 3 Deep Blue Sea movies on my projector. Like most trilogies, the first one was the best, I can imagine. Now about Swamp Thing. I had a DVD with PG version still showing the nudity. I couldn't believe my eyes. I was shocked. I had to freeze frame it for 20 minutes. That's because the screen was hurting my nose. LOL. I saw Swamp Thing and Return of the Swamp Thing as a double feature at my local cinema. I love seeing a young Ray Wise as well as David Hess. Adrienne Barbeau said that the set had a lot of blow. Yeah, I heard that too. She said that in an interview. She was not only an early Scream Queen, but she worked with just about every director in the genre except Tobe Hooper. My local cinema bestowed upon her a trophy declaring her the Midnight Movie Person of the Year. The whole month they showed her movies, including a short zombie film called Alice Jacobs is Dead. A couple of nights ago, I watched the 1985 TV movie The Midnight Hour. I liked that it took place on Halloween and liked some of the cast. I remember a couple months ago you reviewed Jekyll and Hyde together again and said you were unfamiliar with Mark Blankfield. Then I told you about him, a little about him. He was in The Midnight Hour playing the ghoul who kept eating. Yeah, I don't remember him in that movie, but I've seen The Midnight Hour a dozen fucking times. Love that movie. One of my favorites. I could have done without the Sherry Belafonte song and dance bit, and it didn't age well, but I love the Halloween decorations and some of the costumes. I also have been watching your early videos from Cinema Wasteland. They are fun to watch, man. Yeah, thank you for watching and everything like that. I appreciate it. You know what? I realized, where is my bag? We got an update to do, but first and foremost, I'm going to do my Patreon pick. I'm going to get 5 names out of this hat. What do we got here? Because I think we're up. If I'm not up, I'll watch that next one first. And so we got Sue here, Tom Brooker, Deep Rising. I don't think I've covered Deep Rising on here. Fun movie, Steven Sommers, best movie. And then we have Chris Rivers, Harvey, with Jimmy Stewart. We got 3 more coming out. 1, Jim Simon, Holy Mountain. I don't know if I've covered Holy Mountain on here, but if I have, man, have I covered Holy Mountain? Or El Topo. I don't think I have. I've watched them before, but I don't think I covered them on the show yet. And then we have David Luton, Sallow. Well, fuck me, right? Been a long time since I watched Sallow. I guess speak of the devil. Somebody brought up Sallow. Now I gotta watch it. And Jason Willard, Hydra. Hail Hydra. Yeah. So let's get into this update. Let's hop into this update. First up, my Vinegar Syndrome order came in. This is 2 Cat 3 titles. Devil Fetus from 1983. Had a DVD. Never got to watch this movie. Looks fucking wild on Blu-ray. And then next up, Her Vengeance, which is another. It's a weird rating here. This movie had different ratings and stuff like that. But Her Vengeance is an awesome 1988, I think, revenge movie. And I know it's got commentary by Bruce Holchek and Art Edinger. I love Her Vengeance. It's got 2 versions on there. I'm excited to watch I think a version I've never seen. So fucking awesome movie. If I'm not mistaken, that's the director of Story of Ricky and The Cat and all those crazy ass movies like that. Then we have one from 82, Brimstone and Treacle. This is a fantastic movie I've watched for 82. I'll probably rewatch it now that I got a Blu-ray. This has Delham Elliott and Sting in it. Just a fantastic, crazy movie. It's not the first time, I don't think, this one's been done. There might be one after too. I think it's more of a stage play possibly, but yeah, awesome to see that on Blu-ray. Great movie. And then we have Forgotten Gialli Volume 8. That's right. We got 3 more in here. Rings of Fear, Reflections in Black. A.A.A. Masseuse, good looking, offers her services. I wonder what that's about. I mean, can you get a little bit more descriptive on the title? Maybe get a longer title there, honestly. So Rings of Fear, Reflections in Black title. All 3 of these I've heard of. Rings of Fear, is that A.A.A. Enigma Rossi, I think, and that's part of that Schoolgirls in Peril trilogy. Possibly the first 2 by Massimo Dallamano. And then next up, that might be wrong, but hey, I think it might be right. The Belly of an Archetype or Architect. Jeez, oh Pete, I can't speak right now. Sometimes my brain works faster than my mouth. If that makes any sense to anybody, if that's a case of ADHD for all you guys like that. Art is the food for madness, and this is a VSL release here. What do we got coming up next? We got 38 Special, the Gazer video. This looks like a Mexican kind of exploitation action style thing. Now, Mexico has a lot of crazy-ass movies like that. Fortunately, it doesn't look like all these are going to have great elements. That's why we're getting them on the Gazer. But this looks wild and fun. Yeah, looks cool. What do we got next? We got Cannibal Orgy and the films of JT the Fourth or IV. These all sounded weird when I picked them up, so I grabbed them. Don't know much about them. This is a VHS shitfest. Is it a shitfest? looking for the fucking little thing down here. No, it's Bleeding Skull. They're very similar, though. Looks fun. Looks wild. Always pick up the Bleeding Skull. Then we have Lydia Lunch here. The gun is loaded. And Road Rant from Saturn's Core. Lydia Lunch, I remember from those Richard Kern videos. Is she the one that's like, you killed me first? I love that so much. Kisapmata, great fucking Filipino movie, man. Highly recommended, dark family drama in the wink of an eye. Kisapmata from '81. This actor here is fucking scary performance. So happy to see this one get a Blu-ray from Connie Films. I would recommend you guys check this one out. Don't sleep on it, man. It's nice to see some of these Filipino movies getting releases. Cannibal Girls, Canadian exploitation classic, which I've never seen. I heard good things about it. I heard a lot about it, and just never seen the fucking thing. And did Harold Ramis, not Harold Ramis, geez, Ivan Reitman produce this or direct this? I remember it was one of that classic group of guys doing that thing. But Cannibal Girls, nice release from the Canadian line they got, the Canadian International, isn't it? And then the last one, The Oldest Profession. I picked this up because I knew the director. This is Film Movement. So I know I can't remember what the director did, but I remember looking at their work and was like, yeah, that's going to pick that one up, obviously, about a prostitute. But yeah, that's not everything. I'm going to try to get this bad boy in the shot, and I think I'm going to open it because this is the Paramount Scares Volume 2, and it was on sale. And they got me because it's like 4 random-ass movies in here. It's like Friday the 13th Part 2, which I wanted on 4K. Breakdown, which I like. World War Z, which is okay. And Orphan First Kill, which is a sequel to Orphan. And I've never even seen the first fucking Orphan. So I was like, I should watch Orphan. I hear good things. I heard the sequel's even more fun. So it's not a bad 4 movies. But I don't like them throwing the Friday the 13th movies in these sets because it's fucking obvious why they're doing it. Because they know Friday fans will buy anything. And I'm over here buying anything. And I'm not like a Friday fanatic. But I do like them. So here we go. Oh, they got for the price, you get a little Fango magazine in there. Not bad with Friday the 13th in there. Breakdown. Cool. What else do we got? If I can get this open and without ripping it to pieces. Is this a poster? What poster is it? Oh, it's Friday 2. So this is more of like a special edition of Friday 2 already. Camp Crystal. Like, here it is. It is Paramount Screams. What else the fuck is in here? Paramount Scares. I mean, it's cool. And then we got the 4 movies in here. You're all doomed. It's a cool set, guys. And I did buy this myself, though. Friday 2 on 4K. If not the best Friday movie, one of them for sure. Not my personal favorite. I'm a 5 guy because I'm trash. I understand it's trash. Breakdown, fun Kurt Russell movie. Underrated movie, man. J.T. Walsh in this movie is a fucking monster. He's good. He's got a good cast in here. I watched this not too long ago, I think. And the slip covers are not super thick. They're a little thin. They're not like heavy-duty shit in here, but what else do we got? What's up next? Mother Nature, serial killer. I don't give a shit about them. The slip covers aren't great either. They're fine. But World War Z, I like the movie. I know a lot of people don't. I'm a zombie fanatic, but it's. I watched it once. It was pretty intense, pretty fun movie. I think the first act's much better than the second act. The chaos is great, and then you're like, okay. And Orphan First Kill. That's a pretty vibrant cover. I like the cover, just the color at least. But yeah, I'm not a hater. I'll watch that. It looks fun. I heard only good things about the Orphan movies, to be honest. They're supposed to be pretty fun. But yeah, it's a cool set. And, you know, I'm not ashamed I bought it because it's got Friday the fucking 13th Part 2 in there. And I'm a big fan of those. And my friends always make fun of, horror fans for being marks and all that kind of shit. And I'm like, yeah, we are, but let's be honest. So are they. Friday fans are the biggest marks of them all. How many renditions of Friday the 13th have they bought? Let's be honest. And I'm a big mark too. I buy so much stuff. I get a lot to review, but I purchase a lot too. But that's a cool set. Yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.